Good morning. My name is Stephanie Williams. I'm an educational advocate for children and adults with disabilities. I've been working in the field for over 38 years, and I've helped educators, parents, and children receive supports, resources, and services throughout the years. And it's been a great pleasure working with professionals too during training. Today we have a special guest with us. We have Representative Brad Buckley. And welcome, Brad Buckley. We appreciate it, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Education is obviously an important issue in our state or certainly in our community. And anytime I get the opportunity to talk about that important issue, I'm always happy to do so.
Great, great. We know you're a fellow Texan.
That's right.
I did not know that you were born and raised in Rural Bell County.
I was. Well, actually, I was born. My first home was on 10th Street.
Wow.
I lived on 10th Street when my mom and dad first came back to town. They both, my mom and dad met in Killeen. My mother's father was here in the military, and my dad, of course, his mom and dad were both educators for Killeen ISD.
Right.
And so they met, went off to college. They came back. My dad went to work at Fort Hood, civil service, and my mother began teaching school.
Wonderful.
And we lived in a duplex on 10th Street, and our next door neighbor was a longtime first grade teacher in Killeen ISD.
Okay.
And then I lived in town till I was about in 6th grade, and then we moved out into the rural areas where I was raised for the bulk of my life was in Rural Bell County. We love horses and cows. I'm kind of a livestock guy, and of course my passion for veterinary medicine grew out of that experience.
Wonderful,
So
wonderful.
That's where we all started.
Well, you also attended Killeen ISD school.
That's correct. I am a 1985 graduate of Ellison High School.
That's way back.
That's way back. I
Yeah.
met my wife in senior English. She's a
Okay.
1985 graduate of Ellison as well. She came here. Her stepfather was here in the military.
Okay.
And so we met, and then we married in 1991, and she went into the business world. And then in 1993, we came back to Killeen when I went to work in a veterinary practice, and she began teaching business or marketing in high school at Ellison at our alma mater.
Okay.
And then throughout the years, a nearly 30-year career, she has been a high school teacher, a student activities director, a curriculum director, assistant principal, elementary principal, district curriculum person, and now assistant superintendent for secondary schools. She's completed her master's and her doctorate. And so for someone that began her career as in everything in the business world, education has become her life's work.
Right.
And veterinary medicine is my profession.
Right.
But what I've always been involved with and passionate about was our education system. And with my grandparents being educators, my mother was a first grade teacher and early childhood specialist for Killeen ISD for many, many years. She's now deceased. It was always something, education was always something our family talked about a lot.
Right.
And something that my mother particularly was extremely passionate about early childhood education. And she always, what I recall, Stephanie, was always, when my kids were very little, and I thought at the time, wow, they're really little.
Right.
Mom would put them in her lap and she put a book in front of them.
That's
And
great.
I used to think, gosh, Mom, I hope my kids are bright, but I don't know if they're reading yet. And she told me, she said, in our schools, too many kids come to school and they don't know what to do with the book. And so sometimes it's those early stages, where we're doing what we think to be maybe little things
Right.
that have a huge impact on the brain of a child.
Right.
And so
Absolutely.
what can we do to begin that process? They're so inquisitive. I have a nearly 22-month-old grandson, and just spending the weekend with him this weekend, just to see their brain begin to function, and they ask, you can see the little questions popping up through their eyes and how they try to express themselves.
Right.
It's so important.
Yes.
And so it's been an honor to work on education issues for a long time.
Well, I actually probably have I'm on the other spectrum of education. I really love education. I'm a great advocate for it. I grew up as an orphan, and I struggled through the educational system. I have children that have struggled through the educational system, and I have grandchildren who have struggled through the educational system. And that's probably why I got involved in education. Special education is the heart of what drives me. And the things that I see in our current world going on in special education hurts my heart. But I'm glad that you have a strong heart and passion for education. I'm glad that you sat down today to speak with me about our educational system. I know that you have served on the Killeen Independent School Board, so you know how our board works here in this city. And I would like the public to know that you are a two-time representative for District 54, and you have been working on Veterans Affairs Committees, the Education Committee, and you have also been newly appointed to the Criminal Justice
Criminal Justice Reform Committee, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, three important committees, of course. You know, our Defense and Veterans Affairs speak to the issues of so many of the folks that call HD 54 home.
Yes.
And so those issues, and we worked, you know, a lot on primarily my focus of work has been on making sure veterans and military spouses can get to work in Texas as soon as they get here.
Okay.
And that's military license reform, occupational license reform for our veterans or military spouses. So
right.
we passed several bills, both sessions, that involve that. And so basically what it means is when Uncle Sam sends you to Fort Hood, we want to make certain that a military spouse can access work as soon as possible if they need an occupational license.
That's great.
We've even done so with education to make sure that a teacher that is teaching and certified outside of Texas has a mechanism to get in the classroom faster, remove some of the bureaucratic red tape that has been in place to make sure that when folks need to get to work, if folks want to work in an occupation that requires a licensure, or they want to work in our classrooms, that we can sort of clear the path for them.
Right.
And we've been successful doing that. I think that's important. You know, so many of our families are dual income families. So if mom or dad gets assigned at Fort Hood and then the spouse cannot access work because of bureaucratic red tape, then that really impacts a family. They're used to dual income.
Yes.
And so that's been an important thing, important thing that we worked on. We've also worked on some ways where our communities and our military installations can work together better,
right.
so that our cities can provide services for military installations, or our counties. And this is, of course, legislation that applies across the state of Texas. How can we have a better partnership between our local communities? Because, you know, we have a fence at Fort Hood,
yes,
but we really don't.
Right.
You know, we're really so interconnected that it doesn't, you know,
it overflows.
That's right, it is, because our schools are on Fort Hood.
Right.
We have so many of our citizens that live on Fort Hood.
Right.
And those that live off of Fort Hood but work on Fort Hood. You know, my
right.
dad went to work on Fort Hood for 38 years.
Awesome.
And so, you know, it's important that we have, you know, a great partnership and an understanding of a military installation and the community that surrounds it.
Right.
And really the community that serves it.
Yes.
And so that's been a very, very important issue. Now, public education on that committee has been an honor. It really feels like to be the committee where some of the most important work is being done. Well, obviously, we've been through this COVID pandemic and this disruption of really unprecedented times. And so, you know, that's important for us to deal with those issues that we've seen come to the surface because of COVID. And of course, criminal justice reform is an issue that I've worked on several bills while I've been in the legislature concerning criminal justice reform, so we're working on that as well.
Yeah, and when we talk about criminal reform, or we talk about criminal justice, what brings to mind for me is juvenile justice.
Yes.
And so students of color and students with disabilities are at a higher risk of disciplinary actions and removals it decreases the chances of graduating and increases their chances of entering the juvenile justice and criminal justice system. What are some solutions to the school-to-prison pipeline that currently exists? What do you have in mind for that?
You know, we had a great hearing in Austin just last Wednesday about this very issue, where we sat down with the interim director of Texas Juvenile Justice Department. We had leaders of nonprofits and other organizations come, and then we talked about the challenges, you know, that we're facing right now.
Right.
With staffing shortages at TJJD, with the fact that our kids are now, we both have them what we call pre-adjudicated and post-adjudicated. We have some that are in our county facilities, and it's sort of disparate across Texas. Some of those issues are handled very much on the county basis, others it's handled more by the state, and it became very obvious there's a lot of work to be done in that area. And the way I think of it, Stephanie, is I think of it like this, is that, our chair of public ed, Harold Dutton, said in a hearing one time, he said this in passing, something that really stuck with me was, our kids' issues with our public schools, and we were really talking about dropouts, but I think we can talk about just those kids that are struggling.
Right.
They don't begin when they drop out.
No.
They begin
Early.
10 years earlier.
Yes.
And
Kindergarten,
so, pre-K.
Absolutely.
So what I focused on, and one of the things I think is so important, is that we get that pre-K to 3 space right.
Yes.
And that's when kids, the data is clear that if a child is on grade level and reading on grade level at grade 3,
That's it, third grade.
that it doesn't solve all our problems,
No.
but that is a huge benefit. So you have to learn to read, right? To read to learn.
Right.
So if we get it right in 3rd grade,
Yes.
and we do what we can to make sure that all kids are achieving and reading on grade level at that point, then we can mitigate a lot of these problems down the road.
Right.
Now, as we move down the road, we have to understand that our students are just a microcosm of our society. They're just smaller, younger, and what I mean by that is they're going to have conflict in their daily lives the way we do. And what you'll see in our schools that I think where it works the best is where there is a trusted adult on campus that can be that person that a youngster can go to help sort of diffuse a situation, to take the heat down, to have that moment to vent, so that it doesn't move on to something that sort of engages the disciplinary system.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
That's one solution, and I think it's a good solution
Yeah.
that we have people who are
Yeah.
caring and actually trained, probably in
Yeah.
mental health,
Yeah.
to actually talk to these children and maybe
Yeah.
calm them down and get them to realize that there are choices that they can take
That's
and
right.
make,
Yeah.
and that the choices, it's part of their decision-making process, and that we can move forward from there, and we don't have to involve police, we don't have to involve the judicial system. Those are the things that I'm really scared about, that a lot of our children who have disabilities, that have mental issues, that do not have the education that we require them to have, are going down that pipeline. And so the one solution is having one person there or people there that you can discuss issues with. What's another solution?
I think when we look at those kids that do enter the disciplinary track, I believe that we need to have strong mentors in place, because there are times when I think that a child is looking for a role model, looking for a light, if you will, and they need to see that role model. And probably at those times it's most critical is when a kid is really facing a choice.
Right.
Am I gonna find a way back to being productive,
Right.
in productive life and having a productive education, or am I gonna go elsewhere? If you look at our high schools, my wife was a high school principal for 5 years, and you see some kids that they're looking for that role model or for that family.
Right.
It's got to be the right family.
Right.
Because our gangs and some of those people that really have nothing but they want to use our kids
Right.
are there to sort of to step up sometimes. And we need strong mentors, and we need those folks to be able to engage with our kids.
How do we get more mentors in the school?
Yeah. I think we have programs now, and I'll speak to KISD for that that does that. I noticed on the first day of school, you saw, I believe it was at Liberty Hill Middle School, where you saw a group of
Pastor
primarily
Brown
men.
and some of the people from Comanche Chapel.
Yeah, that's right.
were out
That
there.
came out to
Absolutely.
shake hands and just tell kids, hey, we're here with you.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, that can't stop.
Yeah.
That has to keep going, and so we have to make sure that we're engaging with the communities to come in and help us. When we have events on campus, we need to make sure that our communities are represented, and that our folks, again, that could be that trusted adult
Right.
that kid can go to say, I'm having a bad day and I'm thinking about doing this,
Right.
and that mentor can say, no, not that way.
Well,
This
that
is
works great for being standing outside the school. But when you get inside the school, and you spoke to KISD, so I'm going to speak to KISD. When you
Okay.
talk about going inside the school, it's limited. There's not a lot. There's a lot of red tape you have to go through in order to get into school to help
Yeah.
children. And so, how do we get people into the schools, kind of cut down on some of that red tape, and do we reach the youth that have behavioral concerns, low social skills, and disabilities, and need our help? How do we do that?
Well, I think a lot of times what we're seeing is that, laws are pretty clear about, on campus of folks, and we have to have folks have to be background checked, and then
That's good.
there's a daily routine that is required. We have to
Right.
have so much, seat time, kids have to be in class.
Mm-hmm.
But there are ways through innovative scheduling to carve out time
That's
where
great.
we can engage
Mhm.
our students. We're looking right now at what we're doing for basically accelerated learning and recovery from COVID,
Right,
and that carves out time for tutoring.
right,
And
absolutely.
one of the things I've looked at is we've had trouble filling those tutoring spots.
Right,
We have a community full of folks,
mhm,
I think that would be outstanding tutors
right,
that could tutor them in an academic area.
mhm,
But in doing so, also be a very strong role model. Because, that exchange between a tutor or teacher and a student
mhm,
isn't all about ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, if you will.
Right.
There's more to it than that.
Absolutely.
There's a trust factor that begins to
You have
form.
to care in order to teach.
That's right,
Mhm.
and I think that, that there's opportunity in that space. I know that
Right.
districts of innovation, which is a designation that school districts can apply for through the state,
Mhm.
have the opportunity for creative scheduling.
Mhm.
And, those are the times, when we carve out time, then we can get the right folks engaged with kids so that we can really help kids that are struggling.
So when I asked you the question about how do we help children who have problems and are headed from the school to the juvenile justice
Mhm.
system, I hear that you saying back to me that we have to carve out time for them and we have to have more people on campuses working with them. So those are the two solutions that we have so far.
Yeah, well, and let's think about when, those are very broad.
Right.
But, the assistance has to be targeted as well. We have to know what's driving, when we identify kids with certain learning challenges,
Mhm.
then we have to make sure that those services are meeting those kids where they are.
Yeah, doing functional behavior
yeah.
assessments and
Yeah.
developing behavior intervention
Yeah.
plans that
Yeah.
are workable.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and there have been, modifications to that through state legislation over time.
Mhm.
But here's the other thing that I would just wanna sort of posit this for a moment,
Mhm.
is that when it comes down to it,
Mhm.
that interaction between that child's teacher and that student
Right.
is the most important thing that occurs,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, I
I mean,
agree.
because they are the educator, that's why
Yeah.
they are there.
Right.
And I think right now, in some instances, that we have our teachers, especially in the special ed space, with such a large amount of documentation that has to be done, that it's crowding out opportunities.
Paper trails.
Paper, yeah, and those things, and we talk to teachers, and we have a real staffing shortage.
Mhm.
We have
Yes.
teacher shortages.
Yes.
And when you look at the documentation and some of the other things besides kids, teachers with
Mhm.
students, a lot of teachers are frustrated. And it's too much.
Right.
We need, obviously, there are plans that have to be followed. Those plans need to be, they need to be transparent. They need to communicate with parents. Parents need to be involved. We need to work together.
Absolutely.
We need a partnership.
Well, that leads
It
me-
cannot be adversarial. It
Yeah.
has to be a partnership.
I agree. And that leads me to the next question, whereas you do sit on the educational committee
Mhm.
and you are making decisions.
Yes.
We have parents and educators that have been sounding the alarm about systematic issues for years concerning the lack of evaluations, services, supports, and resources for children with special needs. So with that being said, we know our teachers are overwhelmed right now, and as you already indicated, paperwork is a big part of that. How can we scale that down? How can we provide more resources for these kids, more supports for these kids? I see a lot of these kids, I think like 22% of children with disabilities are now being sent over to DAEP or through the juvenile justice system. And that's according to, I think, Appleseed. And so, I mean, what are we going to do to help these children?
Well, the main thing we have to do, again, is you have to have
Mhm.
enough qualified teachers in the classroom.
Okay.
Special education is a very, it's an area that requires special training.
Yes.
And, we've doubled down on some of our teacher prep courses. We've doubled down, on some of the preparation courses that we've had. We've required more of teachers to engage in the special ed space. We need their expertise.
How about more training?
Yeah.
Are we doing more training for these teachers? Because I hear teachers say out loud all the time, Steph, have you ever received training on that?
Well, their training is available. I mean,
Okay.
it absolutely is, and you'll see where teachers and districts have to provide that time to train. Here's where we're at right now, though. We have
Okay.
let's look at the moment we're in.
Right.
When we're having a severe shortage of the number of teachers, right?
Yes.
And so you had schools last year in KISD where you may have had 15 to 17 vacancies
Right.
throughout the year. Every every occupation in our economy over the last couple of years has seen sort of a drain of talent.
Right.
And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, even in a veterinary clinic, we didn't have enough veterinarians there for 2 years.
Wow,
And
okay.
so I mean, and you go anywhere. You could go to a local restaurant.
Right.
You could go to you could go try to get your car fixed,
Right.
and you would find that there were challenges there. Where education folks are, it's no different. And so we have to make sure now that we're bringing qualified, high-quality teachers in the classroom. Here's the other thing we have to have. We have to have high-quality instructional materials.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so those are materials that are designed to help an educator, bring that education, if you will, to the student. And then the other thing is it has to be a welcoming environment where a parent can be a partner.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because,
Yes.
or an advocate, or
Yes.
a guardian.
Absolutely.
Not all kids come from have the same level of home life in terms of family structure.
No,
But
ethics, values, and morals.
that should not be an impediment. It may be a challenge, but it shouldn't be an impediment.
So right now, we have children that are in need of evaluations for the special education program. And our state is lacking in the evaluation process, getting these children help. So the only way that they can make up for that is through compensatory services, which by the age, we both know, if we didn't catch them between pre-K and third grade, they again are gonna be lost going forward.
Yeah.
So that I see as a big problem. How do we combat that? How do we get those evaluations in a timely manner? How do we get the services to them, the supports to them, and the resources to them? Because right now, I know for a fact, we have parents across the state, because I advocate across the state, that are actually saying, I put in for those evaluations, they don't have anybody to do the evaluation, my kid is suffering. And in the meantime, these children are developing behavioral issues because their behaviors are not being addressed, their disability is not being addressed. So from that point, they start to act out as a form of communication. And people see that as a form of just being a bad kid, when it's not a bad kid, it's a kid that's acting bad, and we need to be able to put in place the services that they need. So for me, how do we rectify the fact that evaluations for children with special needs are not taking place in a timely manner, as it says it should do under IDA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act, and get them the services? Because after we even get them evaluated, the services aren't there. The services are not available. We're lacking in speech. I have seen school districts, sir, actually say to parents, your child no longer needs speech, when they know the child does, but they don't have enough speech. One speech teacher for over 8,000 kids with special needs, and out of those, maybe 4,000 need speech. But now we're just gonna dismiss them from speech because we don't have the services available for them. So how do we combat this? How does the Education Committee address these issues? Because TEA has said that there is a problem with
Yeah,
this.
so what you have to do is you have to look at why you're having the issue. Why
Right.
is there delay in the diagnostics? And then why is there a lack of support when it comes to individual services?
And so
I
how
mean,
do we hold them accountable?
Well, you have to bring more people to the profession.
Yeah.
If you have one speech pathologist or speech therapist for 8,000 students, you're asking for a superhuman effort.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So you have to bring folks into the profession.
Right.
And so when we look at a lot of things in education right now, and you look at a tight market
Right.
where teachers and young folks are deciding, these are college, and some not so young folks are deciding to do something else.
Right.
Ask yourself, why are they going somewhere else?
Right.
Okay, is it about financial reasons?
Mhm.
Is it quality of life reasons? Is it work life reasons? All of those things have to be evaluated. Then you have to understand the economic model. If we need to pay areas more to bring people into that space, and I would speak specifically about mental health counseling,
Yes.
which is
I got a
huge.
question on that, so let's hold that.
Okay, but that's another space we have to
Right.
look at. Why
Mhm.
are we lacking
Mhm.
in qualified professionals that want to enter that area of education to help our kids?
Why do you believe teachers are leaving the profession?
I think a lot of it is the fact that COVID took from technology to our economy
Mhm.
to education to energy to everything. COVID pushed everything on the path it was going 10 years ahead in 2 years.
Right.
And
Okay.
so all of a sudden you saw things come to a head.
Right.
And you saw a fact where, a situation where folks sort of reevaluated their lives.
Mhm.
We stayed at home.
Mhm.
We realized what we were doing. We had a moment to reflect.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people said, I'm not doing it this way anymore.
Right.
I'm going to stay at home while the spouse works for a while.
Mhm.
Or vice versa, or I'm going to try something new.
Mhm.
And I think the other thing that has occurred is that the learning loss and sort of chaos that was created in our education system because of the pandemic
Yes.
has created, teaching's always been hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard now.
I think the
It's harder
pandemic
now.
brought it to a head, but I think our education system has been lacking for years, and I think that the pandemic just pushed it, like you said,
Yeah.
10 years
Well,
forward.
And that education system is lacking.
Mhm.
I think we also need to look at all the wonderful success stories.
Oh, we have some wonderful success
We
stories.
have kids
Mhm.
that, at my veterinary clinic, I have a group of young people that are involved in our certified veterinary assistant program through our career center.
Through KISD.
Yes, and these kids come, we have 4 at a time that come and they as part of their curriculum, they work
Absolutely,
in our
I know.
practice. And it is absolutely heartening
Mhm.
to see the quality of the young people that our schools are producing.
Right.
And these kids come from all different backgrounds, and I have young people that are now at LSU studying to become a veterinarian. I've got kids that have decided to become licensed veterinary technicians. I've had some that said, I don't think I want to do veterinary medicine, but now I'm going to become a teacher, or I'm going to become an engineer, I'm going to become a mathematician.
So are these children of color?
Yes, absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
so
These
you
kids
have-
look like KISD.
Okay, because
Yeah.
KISD is the majority
Yeah.
of people of color.
And most of them,
Yeah.
I believe right now in my clinic,
Yes.
every CVA student except for one is a student of color.
All right, high five on that.
Well, I
I
mean,
appreciate that. Yeah.
These are just outstanding young people.
Right.
And so, something's going right
Yeah.
when kids are doing that. And every organization
Right.
may be doing a lot of things right. And in my own organization, if we're doing 99% right and 1% wrong,
We're gonna
we
look
gotta
at the
fix
1%.
we gotta fix the
Yeah.
1%.
Yeah. Well,
You
we're
know,
gonna look
and-
at it.
Yeah, you look at it and you have to fix it.
Mhm.
And so, I think it's the same way in education.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's so much good that's going on.
Mhm.
But the challenge is real when it comes to COVID. Think about young people.
Mhm.
We had a disruption, so you had pre-Kers that didn't go to pre-K, kindergartners that didn't go to kindergarten
Mhm.
because they stayed home.
Right.
Okay? And there was in the law that they could have kind of what's called a red shirt year. They could
Mhm.
start later.
Right.
Okay? Well, that in itself has a consequence.
It
okay?
does.
It does. So, how do you fix that? You had 5th graders, right? That's usually that time. I know for my own kids, 5th grade, the way they organized it in my kids' school was kind of like, and they went to Mountain View or Clifton Park. My kids
Okay.
did.
Now we're talking about KISD.
Yeah, KISD.
Okay.
So in 5th grade, you kind of learn to be a 6th grader.
Right.
Right, it's different. Kids
Yeah.
are going to change classes. It's a lot
Absolutely.
more.
You're transitioning.
Yeah, it is. It's tough, right? And then 8th graders have to learn to be 9th graders.
Right.
Well, now you've kind of got multiple grades sort of meshed together because of COVID.
Mhm.
Some kids came to school a lot, other kids didn't. So
Okay.
that's created real issues in our schools. And so those are the things that have to be solved over the next few years as we get kids back on track.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the question was, what solutions do we have for the special education crisis in our state? So out of that conversation, I don't know if I heard any solutions. So what's the solutions?
Okay, we have to have more, better trained,
Thank you.
qualified educators
Okay.
in the classroom.
And how do we get that? How?
You're gonna have, like you get anything else when you have a shortage.
Right.
You have to incentivize folks to get there.
There, thank you,
You
I
have
like
to
that.
incentivize. You know, I mean, that's the way, when I can't hire someone in my job, in my place of work,
Mhm.
I've gotta look at me first.
Okay,
Why don't they wanna come work for me?
right, that's
Okay,
number one.
and then you say, what is it?
Mhm.
Is it climate? Is it financial? Is it work-life balance?
Right,
You know, those things.
Okay.
And then you have to bring folks in. But here, a young teacher is like anybody that's brand new to a profession.
mhm.
The worst thing you can ever do is just toss them out there and say, all right,
And especially with special needs children.
that's right. It's a
Yeah.
huge challenge.
Yes, it is.
And so we have to make sure that there are the proper type of oversight,
Uh-huh.
mentors and partners on that campus that can show someone that has an academic background how to practice it.
So modeling and actually working with them
Yeah.
one-on-one. Okay.
Absolutely.
That
And so
sounds good.
let's talk the solutions. We need more educators. We need more
Absolutely.
educators in that space.
Right.
We need to make sure that the latest research is identified
Yes.
and it is applied to the practitioner, that
Yes.
the teacher knows about it and can actually practice it
Right.
on that campus. Then we need strong partnerships with families, guardians, and other advocates that are going to say, hey, we're here to wrap our arms around these kids and to connect them so that we make sure that these kids succeed.
And the education committee is working on maybe some funding for additional teachers or additional services and resources.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, you know, IDEA has never been fully funded.
Yeah.
So are we working on
Yeah.
that?
Well, absolutely. You know, we at the state level, you know, we increased public ed funding back in 2019 to a historic level, and
I agree.
you know, we have, you know, it was a huge move towards all day pre-K across the state. The other thing we did, and this is one where COVID sort of really gummed up the works,
Mhm.
was our reading academies for teachers. It was to take our primary grade teachers,
Mhm.
and it was to put them through training where they were exposed to the latest science into the teaching of reading to make sure they met all kids where they were.
Right.
Now, that was a challenge for many districts to get their teachers trained. Some big districts like Killeen could carve out time. Other smaller districts had trouble carving out time to have the resources to get teachers trained. We're working through that. We've given some waivers, given them more time to get it. But let's think about that. You know, I mean, we talked about this earlier. I would argue that reading is number one.
I would agree.
Reading is number one. So by grade 3, you know, we have to be all in on making sure kids at grade 3 or grade 3 are reading on grade level.
So are we gonna be working with the PPCD programs?
Yeah.
Because those are the programs for children with special needs. And so, and again, you said that we beefed up the funding, but those weren't targeted funds for special education, so that creates another problem. If we don't target those funds
Yeah.
for special education,
Yeah.
then funds are used for anything that the school district needs them for. We really need IDEA to be fully funded in order for us to
Yeah.
get the services for these
Yeah,
children.
you know, I wonder about our compensatory education as well. when we think
Compensatory
about-
is good.
Yeah, so let's think about that space. You know, that's
Mhm.
identified to help at-risk kids, right?
Yeah, it
And
is.
so there's some language now and some rules that require that all those dollars be totally directed
Mhm.
to at-risk kids. We've actually done some things last session to open that up some, so that if you have a classroom, okay, and we've got kids that, let's say 80% of the kids are considered at risk and 20% are not, and that's usually done by socioeconomic status, right?
Yeah, but let me say this,
Look.
isn't the compensatory services that you are talking about, COVID-funded compensatory services? So those are
No,
for
no,
kids
no.
that actually had,
No, this is comp ed altogether.
so you're talking about
Yeah,
copy and
comp
altogether?
ed in general, which is supposed to be above and beyond.
Yes,
It's supposed
that's,
to be above and beyond your basic services.
that's only, and you can only utilize that if services were not given to you, at the time or during the time that you were supposed to have them.
Yeah.
For that compensatory, there's two compensatories. So the one that came out in COVID, where it said that, children with special needs had fell behind. And if you was considered to have fell behind during that time period, you're entitled to compensatory service. Then we have the other compensatory services that has always been in the law, whereas if, say, I was getting speech, You didn't have, speech teachers or speech pathologists to work with my student during that time, that I could go back and I can say that you owe me, 6 weeks of 30-minute sessions. So that's, which one of these two are you talking about? The second one?
I'm talking about our basic combat funding
So,
through the state.
Okay, yeah,
And I would like to see that have more flexibility on the campus.
okay, there we go,
And
yeah.
that's what I'm talking about. I want I want a campus, because all our campuses are not the same.
Absolutely
And,
not.
and there are times when campuses are facing significant challenges, and they need flexibility to say, listen, we want to drive funds to solve this problem.
Right.
Here's the other thing that we've done that needs to be expanded,
Right,
in my opinion.
right.
And this speaks to how we solve this problem.
Mhm.
There are times when our schools are giving our kids or providing services, I believe, all they can. And
I agree.
now there is a $1,500 grant where parents can go outside and say, I want to purchase additional services with this $1,500. We need more money in that, and that's one thing we're looking at.
I would love to see that.
Is how can
Love
we
to see
expand that piece?
Yeah.
Where a parent can say, okay, we need, it may be technology in the home to help a child with a disability. It may be additional tutoring or services outside that's provided by a licensed professional outside. We need to build that bridge to that funding. And right now, that funding goes so quickly, okay, across the state, that one of the things we're looking at is making that a larger block of funding so
Right.
that parents can access more services outside of the school day.
I
to
see,
help kids.
I
And
see a
that's
lot of
yeah.
parents have applied for that funding that I think you are talking about, buying computers for their children because they don't have technology.
Yeah.
I think that's a wonderful program,
Yeah.
and I would like to see that program refunded,
Sure.
because I think they've funded it twice so far.
I believe so.
And so,
It
with
needs to be
that.
bigger though. 1,500 is not enough.
Absolutely.
I mean, the times we're living now with
Yes.
inflation like it is, everything costs more. That thing
Yes.
has to grow with that plus some. I think that is a pretty unique space where we can provide additional assistance to kids.
I would love that.
That gets outside, because we talked about, we've got to have highly qualified instructors on campus, right? Well, we can get them, but I don't know if I can snap my fingers to get them, right?
Right,
It's gonna take some
absolutely,
time to
yeah.
build that workforce,
Right.
to train those teachers, to get teachers to stay, right? So what can we do outside of that? That will give parents another option, that are just saying, I need these additional services. You know, there are interesting programs that we have that deal with, or technology that really helps kids take learning disabilities and uses computer programs to help them, overcome those challenges at home. So
Yeah.
that the parent can also just take what's going on the campus and then just make that an extension when
Well,
they go
can,
to the house.
can the education committee actually look into maybe broadening the wording on how those funds can be used?
Yes, that's what I wanna do. You and
then
I are
also put
lockstep
some
on that
more-
one.
Thank you.
Yes,
And
yes.
actually put more funding in
Yes,
that.
that's what we wanna do.
Okay.
And that makes, to me, that makes so much sense in this time when we're short, when we're short staffed. But it makes sense anytime.
So I think that is a great solution amongst the other things that you have
Yeah.
said for special education. The next question I have is about Killeen ISD specifically.
Okay.
When it comes to Killeen ISD specifically, what do you see as the main special education concerns and challenges? Now, we were talking broad a while ago,
Uh-huh.
but I want to just
Yeah.
talk about Killeen ISD.
Sure.
So in the past and in the present, they are still behind, in accordance with TDA's guidelines and the federal regulation. So what do you think should be going on as far as that? Is it the same that you feel about across the state?
I think that when you look at some of the challenges we're having in the special ed space, I think it's very similar wherever you go.
Okay.
I mean, you have to look at it this way. You know, let's look at the number of kids identified and the kids that are there to be served.
Right.
Do we have adequate staffing to do so?
No.
Okay, no, we don't. So that right there would be number one to me, is we have to make sure that when we enact policy, that it has the effect of creating the incentive to bringing a high quality teacher to the classroom
Right.
for our special learning challenged kids, for our disabled and special education students in KISD.
I used to work for the Department of Defense as an advocate for over 7,000 EFMPs here on the Fort Hood installation. And when, of those 7,000, I would say 3,000 to 4,000 attended Killeen ISD. And I actually reviewed most of those IEPs, which is individual education
Oh, yeah.
plans. They came in from like Honolulu, or came in from Germany, which was under the DOD system, the DOD system. And so, when I was reviewing those IEPs, and those children came in here with wonderful services, like I just do a Pacific one. I had one kid came in from Hawaii. They had speech 4 times a week, 30 minutes each time a week. By the time I went in to advocate for this student in Killeen ISD, they had cut that down to 15 minutes per 9 weeks, which was so heartbreaking for me because this kid really needed those services. And what happened was this kid ended up going backwards instead of forward. Whereas he was verbal, now he became nonverbal. It really brought tears to my eyes because I watched this kid be a vibrant kid and learning words and learning how to speak. And by the time we set up an IEP that the parent didn't want to argue anymore about, not that they were satisfied, they just didn't want to argue anymore. They wanted to get help for their kid. And they didn't want to go through a due process, a mediation, a resolution. They just wanted the school system to do right by their kid. And the kid ended up regressing. And so with the kids that I worked with through the Exceptional Family Member Program on Fort Hood and advocated through Killeen ISD, I see a lot of services being taken away from them because the services were not available. Not that I don't want to put blame on anybody. It's the system. The system does not allow them to have the funding that they need to gain these people for children to help them. And so we end up having kids, like I had another kid that was all the way, he had Fragile X syndrome, and by the time he reached high school, he was my size. People are scared of him. Nobody wants to work with him. But he can't communicate. So how he communicates is can I touch you, sir? He communicates by hitting. But the hit is just like supposed to be like this, but he's a big person, so the hit is like this. And now you got him, you're calling the police on him. I mean, it's like, no, he doesn't even, he has the mind of an 18-month-old. Why would you do that to them? So my thing is, KISD specifically, what do you see as the main special education problem? I'm stating what I see, and I hear you say that we need more staff. I know we need more training. When are we gonna get it?
Well, again, you have to, we have to look at those needs. If it's in speech, if it's in other types of diagnostic services, what do we do to create an environment where folks want to come do that?
Yeah, related services across the board, OT, PT, AU services. Under IDEA, there's 11 things school districts are supposed to do for children with autism. I see KISD right now has taken away one of their classes, or 2 of their classes, and made it one big class. And I don't know if they call it a behavior class or what, but now we have children with autism in behavior classes. Yeah, they have behavioral problems, but they also have autism that we're not addressing. And applied behavior analysis is one of the things that they can provide. But nobody has the money for that, sir.
Well, I don't know the individual part of the budget.
Right.
I will say this,
But it's across the board.
yeah, but what you have to do, you have to identify the problem, and you have to come up with a means to solve it.
Right.
Right? And so if it is, is it the fact that we can't find a teacher? We can't find a speech pathologist, or speech therapist pathologist?
Yes.
We can't find a behavior specialist? We can't find the OT people, the PT people, those that need to be engaged with our kids? I mean, that's where you have to ask, what all the books say. Yeah, that's the why, right?
Right.
Why is that occurring? And I believe, this is me, I believe that any shortcomings in our system in KISD are recognized by those in leadership. And I think, our school board has a huge role to play.
Absolutely.
They can be the ones to say, all right, we're doubling down on this, we're directing funds there.
Right.
You know what I mean? That is in the end, there are local decisions that have to be made. And, ultimately, that the strongest voice for that is your board of trustees.
Yes.
Because they're the ones that approve the budgets.
Yes,
Now,
sir.
on the state side, I wanna make sure that we're doing everything, because, you know, our system is really intertwined.
Right,
It's
it is.
quasi-local, state, and it's a little bit of a tug of war, kind of a battle sometimes.
You gotta balance it.
That's right, you gotta balance it. What
Mhm.
we need to do is we need to provide the funds and the framework,
Mhm.
and we need to have oversight to make sure that, that the proper things are being carried out, but then the districts have to carry them out.
So,
And-
sir, can you ask the education committee to work on fully funding IDEA?
Our goal is to make certain that we're meeting the needs of all 5.4 million kids in Texas,
Thank you.
okay?
And so please ask the question.
I will ask the
appreciate it.
question.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And so, this is another one.
Okay?
And it's pretty much almost the same as the other one. Many local families have reported they are not happy with the special education service provided by KISD. And the district is frequently dropping the ball when it comes to providing the proper services. I believe you have answered that, but if
Okay.
you would like to speak more on that,
Yeah.
I'm willing to listen.
I want every family
Mhm.
that has children in KISD, I want their kids to receive the services that they're entitled to.
Right,
And I want us to have an environment where we're all working together to get those services provided.
okay,
And I want parents to have a voice, and I want parents to be a partner. Because, that, you know, this can't happen in a vacuum.
No.
It can't be just the school,
right,
and it can't be just the parents.
right.
If we don't
Come together.
build a bridge, and you know, I don't wanna sound cliche, but we have to do that.
Mhm.
When we, you know, when we solve any big problem,
Right.
it is never looking on the other side to do it.
No,
It's always both of us saying, all right, we're gonna solve this problem.
yeah, and look at
Okay.
yourself,
That- yeah.
see what you can do.
Well, yeah, that's right, absolutely. Everybody needs to take a hard look
Mhm.
at, am I contributing to solving this problem?
Mhm.
Or am I contributing to extending the issue?
Yes,
You know what I mean? So I think that's a fair statement. I don't want any parent, you know, as a state representative serving on the Public Education Committee, I don't want any parent to think that the system is operating outside of their wants and needs for their child.
yeah.
They need to have a voice. They need to be a partner.
I think that a big thing for parents here in this area, since we talk about it a lot, is that the military actually sends parents
That's
with
right.
children with special needs
Yeah.
to this area because the government feels like IDEA is a federal regulated program and you must provide those services. They do not understand, I think, state laws, they do not understand the side-by-side under IDEA, which we have created here in Texas.
Mhm.
They do not understand that they have overwhelmed the system somewhat because they bring that many children here. And the school district may not have the services, the funding to fully incorporate their IEPs, which I am sympathetic to,
Sure.
but I am also a advocate for children, so that bothers me.
And we are, you know, and we can look at the number of kids that are here to serve.
Right.
We can look at why they're here
Right.
because of compassion. What are the
Compassionate reassignment.
Compassionate reassignment.
Yes.
We can look at all of that.
Yes,
The reality is they're here,
yes,
and
that's
they
it,
deserve our best.
absolutely,
They deserve our best.
yes.
And they deserve
Thank you for
the state,
saying
they
that.
deserve the state of Texas's best.
Right.
They deserve KISD's best.
Mhm.
They deserve your best as an individual, my best safety challenges.
Right,
And we have to meet that moment.
right,
And there's really not any other answer but that.
yes,
And, you know, we're all in that together,
yeah.
right? I mean, you know, the federal government
Mhm.
wants to send those kids here.
Yes,
Sometimes things are hard. Right?
Yeah, it's
Sometimes
hard.
it's hard.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
we're gonna do that. I think, I really believe this, and I go all over Bell County, and I've traveled all over Lampasas County,
Yes.
talking to teachers and parents and administrators. You know, and maybe I just talk to the good ones. I'm telling you, there are more folks committed to public education around Bell County that want the best for kids.
Yes,
They may have a little bit of different opinion on how to get there,
right,
but I don't think the mountain between us is as big as we think it is.
yes,
Once we always, you know, you have to think, I think always this happens in any endeavor you're involved with.
mhm,
You have to sometimes sit down and take stock in why am I here? What's the mission of this system? What's this system supposed to do?
Right,
Education system educates kids.
right.
That's what it
Absolutely.
does.
Absolutely.
That is what it does.
Mhm.
It's not a factory.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We're not cutting out widgets.
Mhm.
We're taking a system that's kind of an old factory model. Let's just face it, it is when you look at education system. And we're understanding that every input that comes into it is entirely unique.
Right.
Okay?
And I want to add
Yeah.
to that before
Yeah.
you go on, that we're in the business of teaching performance skills.
Yeah.
We're social skills,
Yeah.
behavioral skills,
Yeah.
and academic skills.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't understand that. They said, I hear people sometimes says, I'm just here to do reading, math,
Yeah.
and science. No, you're here for all of these things. A child is a whole child.
Yeah.
So you have to educate the whole child.
Yeah, and the fact that creating the environment in the classroom
Right.
where those basic, you know, what do they say, reading, writing, arithmetic,
Right.
where that can be accomplished at a high level,
Right.
where our kids acquire the skills they need to compete
Mm-hmm.
in this economy that is worldwide. All of that is contingent upon those others.
Right.
You know, no one operates with, you know, in a bubble outside of the others.
Right.
So that good behavior, good socialization,
Yes.
good nutrition, you know, managing kids with disabilities.
Right.
I mean, think about those that would be certainly have a learning disability in our history that have accomplished so much, have created
much,
and
yes.
basically invented things that have changed the world.
Yes.
You know, that's what I mean. That's what I think about. You know, that child that is experiencing this difficulty,
Right.
inside that brain may be the answer to one of our big problems,
Yeah.
and it's our job to open it up.
I know children that have been, it had been stated at 3 years of age that they would be institutionalized the rest of their life. And I know that person now makes a 6-figure salary and has an IQ of 137. But at 3 years old, they were gonna give up on their kid.
Well, we can't do that.
No, absolutely
No,
not.
we would,
So,
we would never. We
yeah.
cannot do that.
no, we
We can
can't.
never do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I think that you've answered that question. We've kind of hit that
It's all right.
question a lot.
Yeah.
I think that,
It's a good question.
I think here's another one.
Okay.
Yeah, this is same line, okay?
Okay.
Many local families have reported they are not happy with the special education service provided by KISD. They dropped the ball, but what do you say to those families? What would you say to them if they were sitting right here today? What would you say? They believe KISD dropped the ball. They are heartfelt, crying over their child not
Yeah.
receiving services, and their child is suffering. What do you say to them?
Keep advocating for your kid.
Okay.
Be a partner.
Be a partner.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I mean, and be persistent,
Mhm.
respectful,
Okay.
and advocate for your kid.
Yeah.
It's what we all. You know, that's. Here's where I think it comes down to.
Mhm.
Everybody that's had kids in school has had times
Mhm.
when things, let's say, didn't go right. We didn't agree what was going on.
Right.
I'm no different.
Absolutely.
Okay? You go there and you try to solve the problem.
Mhm.
Now, maybe my kids did not have as big a challenge as what some of these families are facing,
Right.
but them going to that campus and having a respectful conversation about solving the problem and making sure the kids receive the services that they need is no different than what I did as a parent. And they need to be diligent about it,
Right.
and they need to make certain that we're, you know, that their kids are receiving the services that that they're entitled to. And then if they're not, what we need to do as policymakers is figure out why can't that happen? Why isn't it happening?
Mhm.
What can we do to stand up services alongside that? And that goes back to what we talked about, is
Right.
these grants or on the side where additional services could be accessed by parents.
Okay.
You know, because I think
Put some more money in
you know,
there.
I can't
Buckley.
I can't provide what I can't provide.
Right.
Right, in some instances.
Right.
Now, I guess here's where, and you know more about this than I do, but I think sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, does it come down maybe to a professional disagreement about? Sometimes it is, and I think that's what you find in a lot of things. You know, there are times, you know, as a veterinarian, that I disagree, that I think we have done what we need to do, you know, in that, or I've been to the doctor myself, or with my kids, or with my wife, or with my dad, who's been very ill about, you know, and I don't know if I agree with that. And sometimes it's an agreement, it's a disagreement of that level.
Right.
And so at that point, we have to, we have to decide why we're having that disagreement, you know what I mean, and make sure that we have, an alternative in place.
I want to add to that
Yeah.
because I do find parents come to you and come to people in crisis.
Yeah.
And parents are not educating themselves. And so Disability Rights Texas,
Mm-hmm.
Texas Parent to Parent, Partners Resource
Yeah.
Network, which is a parent training information center, they all do training for parents, and they don't seem to access it as much as they need to. And I would love to see parents access those services prior to crisis.
I agree. I think
Yes.
it gets too far down the road sometimes.
Yes.
Everybody's revved up, right?
Yes.
At that point, we're angry, but it's too hot in the room, right?
Right,
We gotta
right.
lower that.
Yes.
I think for a lot of that's how you build a partnership.
Right.
If it starts out in a finger pointing deal,
Right.
we don't get the results we want.
Absolutely.
Kid suffers.
Yes.
Adults may feel better for pointing.
And as you're
but the
arguing,
kid
they're
suffers,
still
right?
suffering.
That's right. And
Yes.
and that's right. And what do we do to give parents access to those services?
Mhm.
Where they learn what they can be doing.
Right.
But I would say it starts at the beginning of every school year.
Right.
Meet the teacher, go in there, beginning that relationship there. Every year is the opportunity for a clean slate.
Right. I would agree with that.
You think so?
Yeah, I do.
Every year is that chance.
Every day too.
Every day.
Every day is a
Yeah,
clean slate.
yeah.
It
Every
should
now
be.
and then we've all gotten into conflicts and
Yes.
you need to go in and have that sit down. It's a little
Mhm.
uncomfortable, you're a little nervous. And then after you talk about 2 seconds,
Mhm.
everybody's like, okay, I think we're on the same team here.
Yeah.
And so let's do that. Let's make sure that we're encouraging, all of us, encouraging parents to meet the teacher.
Right.
To say, listen, I'm here, here's my child. And here's the other thing. If kids are, because of our mobile population, let's make sure that our educators know some of the challenges our kids have had where they came
Absolutely.
from. And
There's
that's
a
a
form
big
you
one.
can use for that.
That's right, but
Yeah.
it needs to be, that conversation
Mhm.
needs to be had,
Absolutely.
where parents and teachers sit down and say, all right, Billy, he struggled here.
Yes.
Jasmine struggled over here, and
Mhm.
where we came from. I just, heads up. I just want you to know, so that the right assessments can be started earlier. And so but I think that's important.
Yeah.
Let's get on this early, and before everything revs up to conflict.
I agree. I think that earlier, maybe about 10 years ago, there used to be a book out that says I Am. And the book, you could put in there about your child and hand it over to your teacher at the beginning of each year. Because when you're meeting with the teacher, she's got to meet with, 30 parents maybe?
Oh, yeah.
And so she doesn't have time to sit down and
Yeah.
know everything about Jimmy at one meet the teacher meeting. But she may have time later on,
Yeah.
at the end of the evening to
And
go
middle or
through the
high
book.
may have 170 kids.
There you
You
go.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're talking about,
Yes.
across the spectrum,
Yes.
really,
Yes.
really, lots of kids to deal with, and then making sure we're meeting the IEPs
Yes.
of every kid. I mean, that's hard work.
It's very hard.
It's hard work. And
Very, very hard
You
work.
know, and our teachers are up for it.
Yes.
We have great teachers.
Yes.
And so, but we've got to make sure, and I thought the point you made, we've got to meet early.
Yes.
Got to meet early and often.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
To
Cut
make
down
sure-
on some of that paperwork for the teachers. too, I would
Absolutely,
believe.
that is, we're documenting,
Documenting the document.
yeah, that's right. We
That's
need
it
to
right
cut
there.
it back, I
Yeah,
agree.
good.
Yeah.
I'm good. So over the years, I would like to say to those families, I hear you say to be an advocate for them, but I would also like to say to those families, please seek out knowledge on the laws. There's a side-by-side under Texas Education Agency. Please go there, read the side-by-side, Part B, Part C, see what it says about children with special needs, where you'll know your rights. Because a lot of times I have parents who come to me and they will argue the fact with me that they need something or they want something, and it's not in the law. You can't get it. And even apology is not in the law. So those things are not coming.
I got you.
So I would love for them to get more educated before the crisis comes.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Okay.
Over the years, educational staff have reported abuse and non-compliance with the school system with federal regulations, and some have lost their careers. This has to do with the Whistleblower Act. Okay? So I have numerous friends and numerous teachers and staff across Bell County and across the state of Texas that have stood up and advocated for children and have lost their jobs because of it. So So how do we strengthen the Whistleblower Act? Matter of fact, I was at your door, I think last legislation session, trying to get you to actually sponsor the Whistleblower Act that I had rewritten to help. I did that along with Land Carter. I want to make sure I say that.
Okay.
And I wanted to strengthen that. I want people who actually want to help children to be protected. We shouldn't have teachers saying that's wrong and people knowing that's wrong, and when they come forward, they lose their jobs. So how do we strengthen that Whistleblower Act, and can your committee look at the Whistleblower Act?
I'm sure we could.
Okay.
You know, I think, you know, so I know that every district has a process.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean, for folks to come forward when they find a problem in the system.
Right.
You know, I mean, and I think everybody deserves their due process.
Yes.
And every situation does.
Absolutely.
And you know, we want to make sure that those that see an issue with the system, that they can feel free to come forward and state their case about it and challenge, in a sense. You know, we're talking about a learning community, right?
Right.
A school system.
Yes.
A school system is or any learning community is about discussion. It's about growth. It's about challenging the way we do things and maybe doing it differently.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, everybody does that. That's what we do in academic settings.
Right.
Is we should be doing that. Now, you know, I do think that, you know, there are both sides to the story.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And there's certain amounts of disruption and things that are, if it's misplaced on one side or the other, then that needs to be recognized as well.
Yeah.
You know?
Hey, can y'all look at the Whistleblower Act? I would love to bring it back up to you and have.
Let's sit down and let's pull it out. Let's read through it and see where we're,
Okay,
you know,
I'm
where we're at
on
on
your
that.
doorstep,
Come on.
I'm telling you.
Come on.
I'm very on your doorstep.
All right.
So, we're gonna look at that
can do
Whistleblower
it.
Act, and then I also wanted to say, I don't wanna say anything else. I'm satisfied with you even looking at the Whistleblower
Okay.
Act, because I would love to see
Okay.
these people protected more. And so, let's see, let's talk about, what is your stance on the mandatory state assessment like STAR testing?
Oh, well, I have co-authored 2 times
Uh-huh.
radical change to that.
Okay,
You know, state assessment now, let's, for everybody that's watching, let's be clear. It's
Uh-huh.
no longer a barrier to promotion.
okay.
Okay, so it's not.
That was
But,
good. Yes.
yes, it creates significant anxiety in our schools.
Oh, goodness.
And we focus very, very, very hard on that on our campuses because, you know, the way or the level to which our kids perform sort of impacts directly the way our campuses and our districts are rated.
It's teach the test. We gotta
Yeah.
stop it.
What we have to understand is we have to look at the test in itself. Is basically a review of the TEKS,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
TEKS say,
Test
here's what a
knowledge
kid
and
shall
skills.
learn,
Yes.
you know, and it's in a, you know, and I think it's important, and here's the other thing about this, the state assessment, and because a lot of people say, well, just get rid of it.
Mhm.
Federal government requires that we have an assessment.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Or we
Every
can't
state.
access federal funds. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's sit here, you know, I can say, I'm gonna propose a bill to do away with the STAR test.
Right.
Well, that is not gonna happen.
Right.
You know, because we have to have some sort of assessment, some sort of an accountability system.
Yes.
And let's think about an accountability system as well.
Mhm.
You know, we have strived for years to look at different students, different groups, different population, subpopulations to see how they're performing.
Right.
You know, we need to not take our eye off that.
Right.
We need to know how all kids are doing,
Right.
right?
Yes.
Okay,
Absolutely.
I mean, and so, you know, but the STAR test has become so anxiety-ridden on our campuses. You know, I remember falling the trap, you know, every day. Here comes the STAR test. We
Yeah.
gotta get up
My
early,
grandkids
kids.
the
Let's get,
same.
you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like this big event, and it just heightens up the anxiety.
Nervous.
You know, I long for a day when our accountability system is a series of assessments, which will always have an education. You took tests, I took tests. Every
Right.
kid from here on out will take an exam of some kind. Is another day at school.
Yes.
It's another day where we will measure where they're at. We can do that through map testing, and we've got all kinds. You know, you got to know. Are you looking for a formative test, a summative test,
Absolutely.
benchmarking test? You know, all
Mhm.
these things that we can. But can we do that and then gather the data and prove to those that want to see it
Right.
that we're doing what we said we'd do.
Right.
Right.
I like Brugans. I think
Yeah.
Brugans
Yeah.
was the perfect testing for children.
So we are, we're in that space that the STAR
Mhm.
test is gonna change drastically this year. It's going from basically bubble in the box
Mhm.
or a multiple choice to an online version that is much more open-ended.
Mhm.
I think we're gonna see, there's gonna be a little bit of a shock value at first because the test is so different.
Right.
But I think in the end, kids will be able to express themselves, show their work, kind of show what they know, not just the answer.
Right.
It's a different way of getting at it. It's also much more adaptable to kids with special needs. It can be, different accommodations can be gained through this new testing format than have been in the past.
Yeah, I was looking at it.
Yeah.
I think it may do well.
Yeah.
I think that even though when we say testing, though, we have some kids with special needs who just stay home and just say, I'm not gonna take the test.
Yeah.
Because it's so
Yeah.
much anxiety for them.
It is, and we gotta get to the point, because we gotta measure the growth.
Right.
When, kids start here, we gotta know that they're there.
Right. Right.
When we talk about kids reading at grade level, by
Mhm.
grade 3, we need to know that.
Yes.
And you need a fair, honest assessment of if they are or not.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because if they're not, we got some instructing to do. You know
Right.
what I mean? We've got to loop back then at that point and bring these kids along.
Well, we also don't have to have just one test. We can do, there's multiple tests we can do to find out where children are. So has the state ever looked into not only just having the STAR, but maybe having another test that may not
Yeah.
have has
Yeah.
as much
Yeah.
data, but doesn't have as much punitive damage towards kids as
Yeah.
far as, you said we've taken away the promotion part,
Yeah.
but there are still teachers out here telling children that if you don't take this test and don't pass, you can't go to the next grade.
Right.
So maybe they need to know that that is
Yeah.
no longer
Well,
in effect.
that every campus should know. They know that. They should know that. And,
Right.
and I think what the anxiety comes from is that I think it's a human nature thing.
It
You
is,
get an exam, you want to do well
yeah.
because it's a test,
But
right?
I still wish we would come up as a state, maybe,
Yeah.
2 different tests. You can take this one or that one. You
Yeah,
give kids
we've
choices.
looked at inserting, like for the EOCs, maybe the ACT,
Yeah.
things like that. SAT actually testified the other day that they don't want to be that test.
Oh,
That was
okay.
interesting. I thought they came and testified in a public ed hearing or interim hearing and said
Yes.
they didn't think the SAT was normed
Yes.
enough or, all
Yes.
that.
Research
testing.
based enough.
Yeah, for that. And so, ACT might be, but in the end, our EOC courses,
Mhm.
that we do at the upper level, are basically designed. We've cut those back since 7, 8, 10 years ago now, maybe, so we don't have as many of those.
Right.
But, we know we'll have some sort of assessment. My
But we're
goal.
still doing that map testing 3 times a year. Which,
Yeah, we're doing, that's benchmarking.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
seeing where
yeah.
they're at and,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing, we're, STAR test on its own, say, well, it's just, it's not a barrier to promotion.
Mhm.
But getting ready for that, we're checking a lot of boxes along the way getting
Right.
there. And that to me may be sort of the ramp up to the anxiety,
Yes.
a little bit. So, I believe our school districts can determine
Mhm.
where kids are. I
Right.
believe we have very, very bright people at all our districts that can come up with the right type of assessment.
Mhm.
But we've got to make sure that it meets our federal guidelines and we access the we meet our federal obligation.
So, your answer to that question is that you've made changes and this year it should be a little bit better.
Well, I don't know. I think there's some anxiety about
Okay.
about the format of the test.
Okay.
I looked at the test and I
Yeah.
went, this is different. This
Okay.
is not A, B, C, or D.
Right.
This is a whole different, and it's going to be graded, and there's going to be partial credit. We're going to have
Ooh.
teams of their folks being trained now.
Yeah.
We've got one person grades it, another person grades it. If there's discrepancy, there's a non-biased third person that grades it. It's a deal.
It
I mean,
sounds
it's-
tougher.
well, yeah, and I think because it's different.
More rigorous.
If I'm used to taking an exam that's whatever,
Right.
one way, and all of a sudden, I remember in school getting, oh, I didn't know we got to write our answers out.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but kids know it's going to be different.
Right.
And so there've been field testing and practice tests, but we don't really have those questions available yet to really show kids real questions.
Right.
So this could be a real challenging year for that. And we're going to work on some things. I don't want our schools, we got to figure out where we're at, but I don't want our schools just to get skewered
Yes.
because we've changed the test drastically.
Right,
I don't think
right.
that's fair.
No, it's not fair.
Yeah.
So, I like that. And I hope that it works out for us.
And it's real adaptable for special needs and kids with disabilities. The new test version of STARS is very adaptable in ways that it can speak to a kid, it can read the question back to them because it's all online. The technology is pretty fascinating.
Okay.
Okay.
So our next question is
Okay.
about impact aid funding.
Okay.
And we have a lot of military people
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
impact aid funding is for Indian reservations and military
Oh, yeah.
installations.
Payment in lieu of property tax.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, a little property tax, and a lot of people believe that those funds should be directed or targeted funds toward military children. What is your stance on that?
You know, I think that the fact that the purpose of the program
Mm-hmm.
is to basically be it's a payment in lieu of the property tax you would get from federal property that's not taxable.
Right,
I always look at it this way.
right.
If Fort Hood was a gigantic Dell factory,
Mm-hmm.
they would pay property tax and those dollars would go into public education.
Right,
Right? Our federal lands, whether it be our Indian lands, or whether it be, our federal property, like military installations and our depots and things like that across, or not. So this funding comes down, in payment for that, in substitute of the property tax.
right,
And it goes to operate in the entire school district.
right.
If you look at a district like KISD, we have multiple campuses on the installation. And, there's the fact that you have to operate campuses, you've got to have, the buses gotta stay somewhere, because the buses are over there, you know what I mean? So I think the way, funding goes, now what concerns me for KISD is the percentage of military kids is going down.
Right,
And, as our community grows, we're growing, we used to be 50% or better.
right.
Now we're, I think, at 35%, and this is all federal law, that it could impact, the amount of funding we receive.
Absolutely.
And that is something that we have to keep an eye on. I know our school board's working on that. So we gotta be mindful of that.
Right,
But directed, I don't know of how you can direct all that towards kids. I know that we've had situations where impact aid has allowed us the funding before, because it can replace other funding to build, schools on Fort Hood.
yeah,
Things like that impact it and help military kids directly. And so many of our military, families live off of Fort Hood. And our kids go to neighborhood schools many times in those instances. So I think the funding now, personally, I don't see how you direct it just to military kids.
right.
You know what I mean? So personally, I think that where impact aid stands, I think the biggest threat to impact aid is the declining number of military students in KISD.
Okay, so you think impact aid as it stands is good?
I think we need to maintain the funding though. We can't lose it.
Okay, so next question is just a little bit harder.
Okay.
Systematic racism is embedded in our schools, has long held back students of color, causing them to fall behind in statistics, okay?
Okay.
So, what changes, solutions, or recommendations would you be giving regarding students of color failing in their academic environment?
I think it all goes back to what we spoke to earlier, is we have to begin in early childhood education, early childhood literacy. I think all of that is the key.
Well, how do we impact the kids that are at ninth grade right now, that are far behind, and some of them can't even read, so how do we affect those kids?
Well, right now, we're doing, we have a new scheduling system in KISD, with what's called Power Hour.
We
And
do.
kids at every lunchtime, teachers will have tutoring times available during lunch. The clubs can meet at lunch. Kids can use this opportunity to do the things that they need to do.
Let
as
me
far as
speak about
getting
that
extra-
real quick.
Yeah.
On Power Hour and the lunch, when we say a kid's at school, let's say from 8 to 3, right?
Mhm.
And so all through from 8 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, we have children in school, in class, studying. Their brain is already on. And now we introduce Power Hour, and we introduce, you can even go to tutoring during lunch. And the little lunchtime that they have, they cannot decompress. How do you think that's gonna affect children's behavior?
Well, it's a broadened lunchtime.
It
It's
is.
an hour and a half long, I think, or a little better. It's an opportunity, given COVID learning loss, an opportunity for kids to gain extra help. They can also have club activities, that they can go during the day. Some kids have to work after school, so they can't go to clubs. I think it's more positive than negative. I mean, it's very common across the state.
Yeah.
You see it there, it's been done in many different school districts. We were really the outlier in terms of having an open campus. We're gonna have our kids on campus all day, because campus is closed. We've got those kids around them, I think kids will be better able to learn in that environment. So I'm ready to see what results we get.
I see it a little different. And the reason I see it different is because we don't have enough teachers, we don't have enough counselors, we don't have enough aides to even manage the educational environment. And now we're saying that we're not only gonna educate you throughout the day in your regular classes, but now we're gonna require you because it's mandatory. And if they don't go, they could actually get a referral.
It's only mandatory if kids, if they're missing certain benchmarks.
Yeah,
You
and
know what I
that'll be
mean?
a lot of kids.
Well, let me ask you this though, what should we do?
Okay.
No, I mean, because I think it's fair, I think you make a fair point. But
Okay,
if a kid's behind,
right,
and we're carving out more time for them to get extra help,
right.
I'd say we ought to do it.
Well, I'm wondering why we're not educating them within the classroom. That would be my number one question.
Yeah.
So why are kids not learning during the regular education hour? Number one, I would have to have some data on that.
Yeah.
And then after I gain some data on that, then I would want to know what would be best for most kids. And then what about the kids that are already failing? Because we're actually targeting them also, and most of those are being targeted. They have disabilities, they have a learning disability, and so now those kids who have anxiety, have some emotional disturbance, have some behavioral problems, are not only required to enter the classroom and learn, but they're also required now to go to power hour and still try to learn. And if they don't pick it up there, or they don't go because of their anxiety or their disability, now they're gonna receive a referral for that. And now they could end up over in the DAEP or the JJAEP system, based off of that. So for me, I would have to look at data, and data would make me move in the right direction.
Data shows that high quality tutoring
Mm-hmm.
is the best way to close the gap.
I think that,
I know, I mean, I have looked at this issue frontwards and backwards because I was concerned as well.
yeah, and I think
Yeah.
tutoring is a way to
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
I think that it shouldn't be punitive.
Oh, it's not punitive.
It is
How-
very punitive.
How is it punitive?
If we're just gonna talk about clean ISD,
No, I think in general, I mean, I personally, I think that when kids have been shown, now, kids have been going to tutoring ever since I can remember.
tutoring is fine.
But this is what that is.
No, this is just a little bit different, because what I have read and what I have saw is if a kid, say, I'm just a kid and I have a disability, a learning disability. Matter of fact, I am a kid, and I'm an adult now, and I have a learning disability.
Okay.
I have ADHD amongst other disabilities. I raised my hand 10 to 20 times in a classroom to learn math.
Okay.
And each time I raised my hand, they would tell me, why didn't you get it? You should have got it. I'm tired of telling you.
Yeah.
I don't wanna tell you anymore to tutoring, and they're gonna try to give it to me, which is great. But if I don't get it there, okay, I might get penalized. And if I don't go because I'm embarrassed, or the fact of the matter is, I don't think they're ever gonna teach me, which happens to a lot of kids, then I'm gonna get penalized too. They get a referral for that. Did you know that? Do you
Well-
know that they can write them a referral for not attending?
Well, if they're required to attend,
Yeah,
some
it's
sort of
mandatory.
renewal, it may be. Now, but I could say this, if a kid is uncertain and they're afraid to raise their hand in class,
Right?
the small group setting that's provided through tutoring is a much more one-on-one situation where a kid can express their concerns about their ability to comprehend a certain subject matter. And I think that that's a much better way to do it. I mean, the research shows that small groups are absolutely, when kids are struggling, that's the best way to close gaps.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Representative Buckley, I agree that small group is the way to go,
Yeah.
but I have yet to see a small group tutoring, yet. And I have seen groups of 20 to 30 in a tutoring class.
This is all brand new, and so what I wanna do is I wanna give them the opportunity to take this model that
Yes.
has been shown to be successful for all kids in
Right.
Texas, and let's see. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna look too.
Because I know you'll be watching.
I'll be watching.
I know you
I'm
will.
gonna be
And so,
watching.
like I said, I think, I think that it's an opportunity for us, for do a lot of things.
I think it's great if it's done right.
Absolutely.
And I think if
I
it's not
agree.
done
And
right,
it'll be, yeah.
then
That's
we're gonna
right.
have a lot of
And that's what
problems.
oversight's about. That's what school boards are for.
Yes.
That's what parents can weigh in on.
Yes.
You know, and all that to make sure that kids are getting what they need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to jump in. We have another meeting here in just a few
Okay,
minutes.
sorry.
Okay,
Yeah.
we are almost finished.
Okay.
Let's see, I'm gonna go to, I have two questions.
Okay, all right.
And so the last question, the second to the last question
Okay.
is, in most school districts across Texas, there is little to no direct access to mental health services. School counselors are limited in their scope, utilized as backup administrators or meeting attendees, and they have little time to assist with the mental health crisis in our school. 500,000 students go without mental health services. How can we get more mental health help in our schools?
Great point, absolutely true, the premise of your question.
Right.
Our school counselors right now, if you look at their job description where it says other duties as assigned,
Yes.
they are loaded up on
That-
other duties as
absolutely.
assigned.
Absolutely.
We've got to find a way, and I'm currently working with other legislators right now in the Public Education Committee on ways where we can bring true mental health professionals to our schools. And that's gonna be, again, it's like most things, we have to have a financial incentive. We've got to work with our local colleges and universities, training programs.
I've seen some of that.
Yeah, that's good stuff
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
good,
I
that's
mean,
good.
it is, and so, but we've got to bring them on our campus, and we have, when they're there, we have to say, this is your lane.
Right,
Your lane is mental health.
yes. I
You
think
know,
it's good.
Like
doing
at the
that.
new Chaparral,
Mhm.
high school,
Mhm.
I know a counselor there that is purely the at-risk counselor.
Yes,
That's all she does.
that's good.
And she is gonna do great work there. And so that's the lane we have to create, because too often our counselors who are great professionals get pulled in to do a lot of the other stuff.
Right.
And so we're gonna have to do that, but we need to have really highly trained folks in that space.
And y'all are working on that as a.
Oh, absolutely, that is one
Okay,
of our
well, let's
primary
move on,
things.
because Ms. Jessica, since
Yeah.
you're limited
Yeah,
on time,
Yeah,
this is our last question.
yes.
Over the past year, Clean ISD has been reluctant or shown limited cooperation to release dozens of internal
Mhm.
investigative reports that detail thefts, assaults, drug dealings, and a whole wide range of employee misconduct that occurs. Reported in the Clean School System to media outlets such as the Clean Daily Herald. Should these reports be released to the public and media? Please explain.
I think they need to follow the law. I think we have privacy concerns with young people,
Mm-hmm.
and the school district needs to follow the law.
Absolutely.
And that's what, I don't know any way to do that, you know.
But release the information.
If it's lawful.
Yeah, if it's lawful, they need to
If
release
it's a lawful
it.
release of the
Mhm.
information, and, you know, I think that's, I mean, that's the answer, is there are laws that, you know, that involve, the privacy of sometimes adults and many times kids.
Right,
And we need to make sure that those laws are followed.
right. And if they're followed, they need to release the information.
If it's appropriate to release the information, then you release the information.
I'm good with that.
Okay?
So, do you have any last thoughts?
Well,
Closing?
I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Right.
I think that COVID has created unprecedented challenges for public education.
Yes, sir.
And it is, when we looked at the data,
Mhm.
it says that if our kids now don't close the gap that's been created,
Right,
it'll have a $2 trillion impact on the Texas economy
Wow.
over 10 years.
that's a lot. Too much,
That's lost opportunity for those kids.
absolutely.
This is who's dependent on us for this.
Yes.
In this moment, for these kids. COVID was not their fault. The chaos it created, the loss of life, the loss of income, the stress on their emotional state, and all that is not their fault. But now it's time to rally around them and bring them forward.
Yes.
And so a lot of things we've talked about today, I hope will be a part of bringing them forward so that they can be successful. And I
Okay.
hope to be in Austin, having those discussions and moving the ball forward.
Okay, I will definitely be up in Austin. I have a couple
Whistleblower
of
bill, we're
things.
gonna talk about.
I have a couple of bills.
You got a couple? Okay.
I absolutely
I'm
do.
seeing.
I want to
Yeah.
thank Align Mortgage for allowing us to utilize their space today. Nancy Pachuco
Okay.
allowed us to
Nice.
come in
That's
and
awesome.
sit in this
Yeah.
wonderful place
Yeah.
where we could
Yeah.
talk.
Let me give people my cell number,
Oh,
if you don't mind, if I release that.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, folks wanna contact me about, any, issue in public education or anything else as your state representative, my cell number is 254-289-4464. And you can reach out to me, and we'll be happy to handle any issue you have as a constituent. I
And-
appreciate that.
And me, as an advocate, I am retired, but you have any questions that you would like answered, my number is 254-289-0022. And in closing, sir, I thank you.
Thank you.
It's
Thanks
been
for
a
having me.
pleasure.
I
It's
enjoyed it.
been a
Thank you
pleasure,
so much.
seriously. I thank you, and you
Yeah.
have a wonderful day.